Welcome back to the Deeper 2025 podcast. We're helping you to go deeper in your walk with God and in your knowledge of God as you read through our deeper reading plan. And today we come to Mark chapter 2. And I'm amazed by the Gospels because they have so much stuff packed into every single chapter. Like Mark chapter 2, we see the healing of a paralyzed man. We see that Matthew is called to be a disciple of Jesus. We see that Jesus teaches on fasting and having a Sabbath. And it really emphasizes this whole chapter. If you want to just encapsulate, what is the whole chapter emphasizing? It emphasizes Jesus' authority to forgive sins and his mission to reach even those who seem unreachable. Even the marginalized is who he's going after. And so as we try to apply what we read today in Mark chapter 2, I think the first thing we've got to understand is we've got to embrace the forgiveness that Jesus brings. Sometimes we think we've done stuff so bad that Jesus can't forgive us, but he has the authority to forgive sins. He has authority that if we'll come to him and bring those things to him, that he will forgive them, and he has all the authority to do that, and he will do that. But I think the other thing we think about is we've got to be ones who reach the marginalized. We have to be the ones who reach out. I want you to think about this. Matthew, I said that in this chapter we see that Jesus called Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. Matthew was not the highest of the high when it came to reputations in his community. Why? Because he worked for the Roman government who was oppressing the Jews. He would get the taxes. And here's how it worked. So if Rome came to Matthew and said, hey, Matthew, old Tim over there owes $5 in taxes. Matthew may come to you and say, hey, Rome says you owe $10 in taxes. And there was no appeals process. There was nobody you could reach out to and say, well, I don't think that's right. You just had to pay Matthew $10. And what would happen is Matthew would then take that $10. He would give 5 of it to the Roman government, and he would put 5 of it in his pocket. And so you can imagine Matthew was a very marginalized guy. He just wasn't a very popular dude because he just was robbing his own people and not even doing it as a person that's doing it for the state of Israel, but he's doing it for an oppressing government. And so tax collectors were not looked on very highly in that vein. But Jesus said, that doesn't matter to me. I want Matthew to be one of my disciples. And he reached out to him, even though he was one of the marginalized outcasts of society. But I think also we've got to understand true worship. Now you're like, well, where do we find worship in Mark chapter 2? Well, I said it earlier. He talks about fasting and Sabbath. And I think one of the things that's really hard for us as Americans is for sure fasting and Sabbath. It's hard for us to skip a meal. It's hard for us to sit and rest. But if we are going to have a genuine relationship with God, we've got to learn to do those things. We've got to learn to fast. We've got to learn to have rest and find rest and not just have busyness in our lives all the time. If you're going to be a genuine worshiper of God, a true worshiper of God, then you have to subscribe to the whole package. You can't just subscribe to the things you like. And so he talks about fasting and Sabbath there. And then I think the last thing that I see in Mark chapter 2 is just that Jesus is able to overcome barriers, that we're called to overcome barriers. You know, the paralyzed man's friends that lowered him through the roof, they demonstrated great faith by overcoming the obstacles they had to overcome to get their friend to Jesus. And it begs the question in my mind, what are we doing to get our friends to Jesus? What kind of obstacles are we overcoming? Or do we come up against an obstacle and say, well, that's just going to be really hard, and we just kind of leave it there? We are called to overcome barriers and obstacles to get people to Jesus, no matter what it looks like. And those barriers that these friends overcame were significant. They weren't easy to overcome. Lowering someone through a roof is not what anybody thinks is normal or natural, but they overcame that so that their friend could come to know Jesus and that Jesus could heal him, not only physically, but also spiritually. I think Jesus' ministry was marked with intentionality. It was marked with purpose. And if our life is going to mean anything to the kingdom, if our life is going to matter in the kingdom of God, our life has to be marked with intentionality and with purpose. We got to embrace the forgiveness that Jesus brings. We've got to reach out to the marginalized, and we've got to understand what true worship is. And then we've got to set our life on that course as we set out to live with purpose and intentionality to bring as many people into the kingdom as we can.